Yeah. Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to the Bladtcast. This is my Chris Russo that I do occasionally for people to enjoy. This is another installment of the Bladtcast, another installment where we talk Peacemaker, and we will try to keep the heaviest spoilers towards the end like we did last time. As always, I am Christian Blatt, and I put together a Peacemaker panel that was last week's audio episode. For our visual listeners, it was just a few short hours ago. And everybody's so excited about this show that two great friends and fellow hosts of a variety of shows that I've done over the years wanted to join in. So welcome back to the Bladtcast, Michael Shirley.
Hey.
Also known as Michael X Shirley, and Nate Miller. I'm not sure if I've repurposed interviews that we've done for the other show for the Bladtcast, but I think you've been on the Bladtcast before. You just didn't know it.
I didn't know it.
You probably did a Marvel movie talk for a movie, and then it was like, oh yeah, and then that showed up over there. And important message in the chat. Keith's dad says, "Hey, Christian, good to see you." Just pulling on a thread from our previous episode before I let you guys share your thoughts on Peacemaker. Our pal Dominicus Saxon wanted us to know that he did not have to use his basement well to convince Mrs. Saxon to watch Peacemaker. That well is strictly for a more recreational purpose. And he elaborates that she watched the first episode with him and liked it, but the ending was too much of a WTF moment. Got her to watch the second one, and by the end of that, she was all in because our guest on our previous episode, John Nolan, aka the Raging Rhino, could not convince his wife to watch it. I didn't even bother trying to tell my wife to watch it with me, but now she heard so many people talk about it. I think she is going to watch it, and I'm like, I'll watch it again. I don't rewatch a lot of shows, but this is one that I might do.
He is just a well of knowledge. Your friend, the amazing Rhino or whatever.
Raging Rhino. Well,
Raging Rhino, yeah.
He's like he's around my age, and he is.
Puts you to shame.
He's a nerd for DC info the way I am for Marvel info from basically the same era.
Okay.
But I don't know most of it. Like, you could have told me that, Peacemaker is, one like the 10th biggest DC character. And I'm like, oh, okay, I just didn't know. But it turns out that most people didn't really know him. And Raging Rhino is in the chat, hearing the accolades to him. Saying that asks if it's recreational as in Playboy Grotto or Lotion Basket. Honestly, Raging Rhino, what's the difference? But I want to ask each of you just sort of your expectations heading into this show. When we talked in our previous episode, he was not the standout from the Suicide Squad movie. He was not the guy where I'm like, I really want to spend more time with Christopher Smith, the Peacemaker.
I don't agree.
He wasn't like the least. I think if you did a King Shark show, that would be really tough to maintain. Polka Dot Man actually would have been really interesting, but yeah. Okay. So all right, I'll start with you, Michael. So that was your takeaway from Suicide Squad. You wanted more Peacemaker.
Yes. I'm a John Cena super fan.
Well, first of all, show off your T-shirt for our video
I'm wearing my WrestleMania
video audience.
Shirt.
So WrestleMania, what is that? 28 XXVII.
God, I can't do math. Yeah, it's 28.
Yeah, that's why I did,
John Cena versus The Rock. So, I've interviewed him. He has the biggest hand I have ever shaken in my life. Like, his hand was like both of my feet put together. It was just ridiculous. And I was shaking hands with a giant. I will watch anything that he does. I love him. He's so talented. His work ethic is incredible. Like, the way he is with his diet and his sleep, and he's just so regimen type of person. Because I guess when you get your body like that, you have to be kind of. And I think that's kind of carried over into the rest of his life.
Yeah, those of us who really put the amount of time into our body, and it's a big part of our career, it really does take a lot. So I can obviously relate
I think it takes a big toll on relationships. Being
totally does. Yeah, agreed. Agreed 100%.
kind of follow that in Total Bellas, how that works out. I loved him, and I loved King Shark, but I love King Shark everything.
Right.
Like you guys were talking earlier about the animated series. I love King Shark in the animated series.
He's in the Harley Quinn animated series?
Yeah.
Okay.
So those were really the two that I really was excited to see, but I wasn't jumping on watch. I didn't watch until the very end. They had all premiered, and you kept talking about it with Eric Connor.
I did talk about it a lot, yeah,
on our Marvel show, and that was like, I was like, yeah, I need to catch up because I have HBO Max and I love John Cena, and it was just that opening. I mean, I think it is this way for everyone, but the opening, man, that just kind of I've never seen anything close to like that on TV, and that I was just hooked from the second Eagly dropped down and was like, ta-da. I was all
I think it was it was John Nolan who pointed out, and like I'd sort of like kind of noticed it, but he was able to vocalize it better than I had. That Eagly lands,
mark. Yeah,
but he misses his mark, so he has to scoot over. And I'm like, yeah, that is a nice touch. So Nate, your thoughts when you saw the Suicide Squad? Was this, they set up this show in the mid credits or post credit scene? So I walked out of the theater knowing it was coming, and I'm like, all right, I'll check that out. But what were your thoughts of him in the movie and then heading into this this series?
If I'm not mistaken, they had like greenlit the series before the movie even came out. So
I don't think I knew about it.
No, they didn't, because James Gunn said that he was so taken by how good he was on the set that made him do this.
But maybe it was before it came out. Release. Maybe it was before the release.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So going into the movie, I already knew that his character was getting a spinoff.
Yeah.
I thought the first movie was really bad, so I had low expectations. Granted, I like James Gunn, but I was just ready for whatever it was. So I was very, very pleasantly surprised with how much I enjoyed it. Lately, I have really found out that I'm a big fan of John Cena. Like, I always thought he was cool. I didn't dislike him. He was just kind of like whatever, another famous wrestler becoming an actor, playing big tough guy action roles. But in the last few years, I've seen him do a couple roles that seem not crazy out of his range, but like different, more complex than we've seen him do. Last year, I don't know if it was last year or the year before, he did. Last year, he was in Vacation Friends. I don't know if you've seen that. It's a comedy on Hulu, and he is hilarious in that. So going into watching the show, I was already like, I'm really excited on John Cena. I want to, especially after watching the movie, I'm excited to see more of this character, and especially being a fan of James Gunn, I was really excited to see him do a TV series, especially with a huge, HBO budget.
I mean, when James Gunn does a series, he does a series. He wrote all 8 episodes. He directed most of them. And the level of involvement, I think, is important, because a lot of people might direct the pilot and maybe write the pilot and then, just sort of, punt it over to somebody else. But you could tell that. What's that?
I said raised by wolves. Cough.
Oh. You could tell that he's just really passionate about it, and on the whole, like, had a great time, because they would I mentioned this last time, that they would do like a cast and James Gunn like watch alongs on Saturdays, and everybody would tweet about it, and just the way that he would talk about it and how excited he got when people noticed the minutia, or wow, this song or that. And so it seems like something that he was very passionate about. And I think that it shows on the screen that he cared. It wasn't just like, hey, you want a bunch of money to do some dumb show? Yeah, whatever. I think it was a lot more to it than that. So I'm going to ask each of you something that I asked in the earlier episode. Was there a moment in the show where you were like, okay, I know that I thought that this would be good. I thought it might be fun. But was there a moment where like, this is where they really got me? This was where I thought it was like a next level. Oh, I liked this even more than I thought. I'll ask you first, Michael.
I mean, the opening song is really, really good. With just the dance. But
do you want to taste it by Wigwam?
Yeah.
Hard rock band out of I think it's Norway, but I get my
Norwegian.
Yeah, I get those parts of the world. And
they did a really awesome acoustic version of the song recently for like Peacemaker promo, and it's
and James Gunn posted it, and it was like from the HBO YouTube channel. And I mentioned this last time. That song is like, I don't know, 13 years old. That band Wigwam, they didn't even win. They were like one of the competitors in the Eurovision. It's sort of like American Idol, but like way bigger because multiple countries are involved.
Yeah, and they're still letting Russia continue, by the way, Eurovision. Even after this invasion of Ukraine, they're letting.
I mean, look, there's war.
Were we to deny the Russian people of music in the time of need?
And then there's television. I mean, let's put our priorities in order. And the craziest thing was that 3 days before the show premiered, their management dropped them.
Yeah.
And
they're getting the last laugh now.
Well, they are, because they, and it's very specifically the rock chart, but they did have the #1 rock chart last week. The #1 song on the rock chart, excuse me. So good for them. And that song, I'd never heard that song before. And we'll spend a little bit of time on the music. There's a lot of the music I've heard a lot, but that was one I hadn't heard. And it's just like, before I saw it, all I knew is that people were like, oh, the opening is so great, I can't skip it. That's really all I knew, though. I didn't know anything going in beyond that. And it did not disappoint. And it really sets the tone for it, What about you, Nate? Was there, because you were interested heading into it, and I was cautiously optimistic, but didn't really know what I was going to get. I think James Gunn being associated, I wasn't really worried. I liked the Suicide Squad enough that I wasn't worried. But was there a moment where you're like, oh, this is really like great or better than I thought, or anything like that?
I mean, especially coming off of the Suicide Squad, I was pretty, I don't want to say I had like super high expectations for the show, but I did, expect it to be good. I was excited, and it definitely met and exceeded those for me. So anytime you get superheroes and then you start throwing in like violence and like sex and all that stuff, then I'm in. That's where I'm at. I like the gritty superhero stuff, or anything that takes what is like the general superhero tropes and then tries to like color outside of that and kind of play with it a little bit. That's the stuff that I like. So I was already on board. I really enjoyed the first. I mean, being honest, the first time I heard the theme song, I was like, "What is this? What is going on?" Right? Yeah. And then like the second episode, you're like, all right, oh, that's that one character, and then the third episode, do you really want to taste it? It's just like, and then like when that, probably like 4 episodes in, I had that song stuck in my head for like 2 weeks, like just every day, walking around singing the song nonstop.
I've had it in my head for like 2 months. That's about
but right. one of the brilliant things of this show that makes it so good, outside of it being funny and not taking itself too seriously while still having good action pieces and character motivations, is like the details. It's detailed like a Marvel movie with like a bunch of Easter eggs and stuff, and that makes rewatching it very enjoyable. Even something like the intro, like there's so many things about the intro that were there from the first episode that I picked on slowly each week, and I literally went back and watched it. I was like, did I miss this before? Right. Like the old man of the neighbor, that kung fu dude hopping out the trap. I watched a great video by Screen Crush that was talking about how the whole dance is like a metaphor for the growth of the characters in the show, which oddly made a lot of sense, which also very deep. But you could just tell that there was a lot of love and like passion that went into the project, and it really comes across. I was really hooked in when I found out about what they were going to do with his dad, because I had a loose understanding of the Peacemaker character. I only really knew him as like a white supremacist villain in DC. So I knew that they kind of have changed it a little bit for the Suicide Squad. So then coming into this, I like that even though he kind of changed the character, he still very much integrated that. And I think he did it in a really good way that made for an interesting character development outside of just like, oh, this guy used to be a Nazi and now he's like not as bad of a Nazi or something like that. Like, I think James did a really good job of like adding depth to, you know, what is still a comedic character, but has like this dark backstory and like these real serious things that he's dealing with. And that combined with the humor and the action on the show and like how well it was shot, I was hooked in from the first episode. I was really excited.
Yeah, and I think it works for the backstory that it's his dad who's the huge racist, and he knows his dad's an asshole, but he's his dad, and you know he loves his dad right up until he puts a bullet in his brain, and he probably still loves his dad, but he just realizes that it's necessary. One of the things that I feel like, you know, if Michael and I were able to contribute to this show, it would be lots of ideas. It would be, you know, a just really messy Excel spreadsheet or a Word document just filled with insults for other DC characters. He talks so much shit about so many of them, and it's so fun. And he, you know, and they'll do a lot where they'll point out, you know, they'll isolate things on social media, like James Gunn will post these videos, and it's like, yes, Batmite is now canon because they mention him, you know, and it's the first time that Green Arrow actually gets mentioned in the DC EU at all, you know, so it's like, okay, he's real, he's not just a guy on TV, and there's so much of that, and it's so funny. The outtake that I like the most is the episode where Peacemaker is trying to point out, like, there's so many other people you could have framed except my dad. And then the long cut of it is him saying, like, I don't know, 100 people. And
apparently he improvised all the.
Yeah. Yeah. And some of it was James Gunn would feed him some names like Howard Stern and Robin Ophelia Quivers. But it was a lot of that. He says James Gunn, and he says Freddie Stroma, I think, is the actor who played Vigilante. And Vigilante says those aren't even real. So James Gunn then points out that means that James Gunn is not canon in the DCEU. Just little things like that. Just that level of stuff. I thought some of that was fun. But did you like, kind of, Michael, did you like the bitchiness of Peacemaker where he talks so much shit about so many characters?
Yeah, I was thinking that the way they kind of all talk to each other kind of reminds me a little bit of our Marvel TV weekly, like off-camera talk. Yeah, they've got really great chemistry, all of them together.
Yeah, and I think it's just funny, the idea that Peacemaker, you know, it's like clearly he walks through life assuming, like, yeah, obviously Wonder Woman's into me, like why wouldn't she be, you know? And just, you know, talking about Batman and Superman and all that, and just all the side characters. He gets pretty specific with their negative traits. Yeah, right, exactly. You know, and one of which we'll talk about at the end. We'll save for a spoiler, sort of the one of the big moments in the finale. So other things about the show, Nate. You know, there's a lot to look at, but I was wondering sort of what you thought. I said this the last time, that when you put a group of people together and they don't like each other at the beginning, it's very often hard to believe that they do end up liking each other. And I think a lot of times when you see that, it's in a movie and there's just not enough time to convince us. But I think they legitimately were able to be like, yeah, these people, you know, I think Harcourt is sort of representing us the way she feels about Peacemaker in the first episode. It's like, oh, you're just a piece of shit with a gun, you know, like, yeah, it seems accurate. And then like, no, he's actually a lot more to him. What do you think about the way that the characters evolved, but really also grow together as like a team?
I think one of the things that made Guardians so good was the interaction between the crew of characters when they were all together. And I think, especially looking at this, that writing of these characters, this group writing and conversation, is something James Gunn is very, very good at. So I think once you have that ability to connect the characters, then you can put them in different places and then connect them, and then they can end up somewhere else later, right? So I think in this show they did a really good job of establishing like the reasons why everyone, like, you know, why Harcourt like kind of doesn't really want to be there, why she doesn't like Peacemaker, why Peacemaker kind of resents everybody and is just kind of like a total douche, and like why Adebayo, is kind of like 1 foot in, 1 foot out. Like all of this stuff is explained. So there's rationale, there's reason for them not to like each other, but also with the way how the plot progresses and the things that force them to draw together or rely on each other, it doesn't come across as like, all right, this is what needs to happen to get to the end of the story. It feels like a natural progression. So it just, I don't know, it just felt really good. I didn't even really find myself thinking about that trope, because I was just getting invested in the characters and their relationships. I thought I did not expect to get that deep into Peacemaker's background. But then also too, like a character like Adebayo is very interesting. Like the premise of being, Waller's child, right? And she's like bringing you in on all the crazy stuff that she's doing. Like that's a really interesting character. There's a lot of like emotional and like moral choices that they're dealing with and like reconciling with. So I think, yeah, I really like this show so much, and every episode for me got better. And I was worried about the finale, but I think the finale was 10 out of 10, A plus. I felt great about the relationships that, kind of resolved and where things landed. And yeah, it just didn't feel forced. It felt really good. I think also to your point too about having space because it's a series and not a movie. This again reinforces why for superhero stuff, I prefer shows to movies. There have been some fantastic movies, absolutely, but unless you're making a movie about a specific moment or what would be like a short 1 to 2, 3 issue arc, if you're adapting a story that is a 6, 7, 8 issue arc, it needs to be a series. You need to have that time to have those big action set pieces and do the cool stuff, but you also have to have time to build the character's motivation, so when that happens, you care about it. It's not just like, ooh, cool, pretty explosions. You're like, yes, I want you to win, right?
Yeah, it's why to date still the only well done adaptation of the Dark Phoenix story is the X-Men animated series, because neither movie was able to stick the landing, as they say.
And I really like to pretend those movies don't exist.
Well, you know what? I was gonna say Fox does. No, Fox doesn't, because all those movies, even the worst of them, even X-Men Origins Wolverine made them a lot of money, so they don't care. But I think that, and that really, that's a separate issue, because obviously characters like the X-Men will be movies and that'll be a big draw. But I feel like the Fantastic Four was never my favorite comic, but I did always like it. But their stories would take a very long time. They weren't quick. Like Spider-Man as a solo character, you could get it done in 22 pages. Yeah, there'll be some themes that are continuing from week to week, but it's hard. And yeah, the fact that we had all of this. What did you find, Michael, about sort of the way that the team grew together? You referenced this. I mean, starting out, it probably by the end of it, it probably reminded you of our original Marvel TV Weekly crew, where we were all so tight and we all loved each other so much.
I'm not going to address that because I'm not really sure.
It was a long time ago. You don't remember. It's fine.
I think you're being cheeky.
I would never do that, especially not to you.
Okay. Oh, you totally threw me off. What was that again?
What's happening?
Yeah, I just was trying to make you laugh as an aside by actually asking you about the way that all the characters evolved throughout the course of the show, and believing them as essentially like a family by the end of it, like we were a family.
For me, I felt like it was kind of like, well, this is one. I have a few problems with the show, but I would be
disappointed if you didn't have any problems.
Be unlike me.
You wouldn't be you if you didn't have any problems.
I felt like they didn't do a great job of saying the names of a lot of the characters, because they're introducing a lot of people at one time. And I feel like they really only focused on the masked characters, saying their names a lot. Like you would hear Vigilante constantly, you would hear Golf constantly, you would hear Peacemaker constantly. But like I had to look up how to what they were even saying, Steve.
Well, especially like Adebayo doesn't roll off the tongue.
Yeah.
And especially because we got Diebeard in our head in like the second episode or whatever.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think the names aren't easy, and Harcourt was the easiest one to remember because it was the easiest name,
It was more that their names weren't said as much.
Sure.
But that
You
also
know?
makes for more unnatural dialogue. It doesn't
I
sound
think
like
if you're a good
that's
writer,
true.
it doesn't
Talking,
have
it's
to
not
be
like, "Hey, Michael, can you get me this? Michael, like that's not.
Yeah.
It's not
I think if you're a good
and
writer,
I will also say I am terrible with names, and I remember most of the main cast names, so shame on you. But also too, I watch the subtitles, so the subtitles are kind of cheating because I get to read the
subtitles are
names.
definitely cheating.
no, there is no world where I will watch subtitles. Like it's not happening. Unless it's like an old anime. But I think if you're a good writer and you're a good actor and you cut your movie well, you can. I mean, it doesn't even have to be saying names. You can be seeing names, written names. That I just found it hard to think of people's names. Throughout.
So you think a name tag that says "Hello, my name is Mern" would have helped the show along?
I mean, I think maybe on some of them that might have not have been so wild, considering the kind of show it is. But for me, where I was totally sold on the team was when Mern died and put his little butterfly paw out and like touched her fingertip, and I was like, okay, these are like, this is my team.
In the chat, Kame Egan says, "I'm glad Peacemaker wasn't a film because, like Nate mentioned, there was such a large character arc to get to know Chris and needed to be broken down into hour-length shows." Dominicus Saxon agrees that in a 2-hour movie, it's hard to get too deep, and Peacemaker is definitely one that was that is like an onion. And the whole cast was well done. I think that the casting was good. I liked. I think that the biggest surprise was really Vigilante, just how much I liked him, because he was one way when we first saw him, and he was still always the really needy, the really needy, like puppy dog, like hopping up and down, like pay attention to me, Peacemaker. But he's also, as James Gunn pointed out, he's a master of murder. Like he's really good at it. He can kill a lot of people really well and really quickly. And so if I said this last time, that if the character was just like, he's really awkward socially and there's things about him, if he was just a fuck up in general, I don't know that the character works as well. But I was just like, I mean, I might not be able to make a conversation. I might fake laugh.
It's very Deadpool.
Yeah. That's fair.
For me, it's very like he watched a Deadpool movie and decided that that's who I want to be. Like it's like Deadpool if Deadpool didn't have powers and also wasn't like one of the best mercenaries ever,
right?
And was just kind of like this kid that was trying to do that kind of stuff. I thought he was an awesome like foil too to Chris's Peacemaker. Like we already have this idea of him and a vigilante and doing stuff, and then you see Vigilante, who's like obviously objectively worse than Chris. Like he even talks about how like, sometimes I've killed innocent people on accident. Like he's there to be like, see, Chris is not that bad, deep down he's a good person. There are worse people that he could be. But I thought he provided really good comedic relief too. I actually expected him to die. I was kind of surprised.
I did too. I was surprised. There were many times where I was surprised. I thought he was going to die in prison.
Like a Jesse situation where like he was supposed to die, but then like people really liked him, so then they like kept him alive.
Yeah, I mean it could definitely.
Are you talking about Saved by the Bell?
No, Breaking Bad.
Oh, okay. I didn't know if you.
So you think that it's season 1 of Saved by the Bell?
Well, I know
they were going to kill Elizabeth Berkley.
Well, it was supposed to be a cocaine episode, and the censorship board was
that wasn't going to happen on NBC Saturday morning.
So they did that.
Michael, I can confidently tell you, I have never watched an entire episode of Saved by the Bell, and I never will in my entire life.
I can confidently tell you that I have a cast photo signed by every single one of their stupid asses.
I could confidently tell you, I used to run into Mr. Belding all the time at Dimples, the karaoke bar in Burbank. He was always there.
You told me this story. I think it's really fun.
Yeah,
Mr. Balding.
Dimples is no longer there, but I like to
really
Mr. Beld. Oh, it's been closed. It's a Whole Foods now. Go figure. But I'd like to think that Mr. Belding still has a seat right there in the Whole Foods food court. Let's get Raging Rhino making a triumphant return. When Peacemaker can't kill Goff's family and Vigilante takes over, you realize he may be a twat. That word doesn't get used nearly enough. I appreciate the usage of the word twat.
Very British.
But he can get the job done. Yeah, that is where we see how proficient he is. And I think that did add depth to Peacemaker, just the fact that, I know they're not really kids, or actually didn't know at that time, but he's like, look, I can kill people, but you were asking me to shoot kids and not telling me why. Yeah. That added a layer to it that I was impressed.
It's important to hear that the context of get the job done is murder people without clear and present cause. And in this case, people who are kids. So yes, in that case, yes, vigilante can get the job done.
They were kids.
But the point was that hesitation that Chris had is what allowed his character to change and not be what his dad wanted him to be. And vigilante represents kind of what Chris would be like if he truly was as morally ambiguous as he kind of presents to be.
I thought a lot about that, how they were very careful not to say which kid was the ugly kid, but we knew which kid was the ugly kid. We knew it was the little girl. We knew that.
And then there was the scene where Peacemaker's speaking to the class.
I couldn't even keep up with his
James Gunn made the point that, I think he posted something from one of the parents about all the kids had fun. They were all in on it. And everything was okay, because he's mean to them, but it was just it just comes off that way. And that was a fun scene where, they ask him about all the real superheroes. That was one of those great moments too.
I felt like Vigilante had one of the best lines when he's going to the bathroom and he's got his underwear around his knees, and he says that he can't pee with fabric touching his bottom or butt or whatever. I don't remember that made me laugh out loud really hard.
It was very funny. It's a running joke in South Park that's how Butters pees, even in the more recent South Park movies where he's an adult. As a joke, that he still does that. So it was very funny. And of course, my son, who's 6, whenever he uses the urinal, that's what he does. So it's always very funny. But
very freeing,
Yeah, exactly. I know. I feel like I'm missing something, but
it needs the constraints of the zipper fly.
A great point from Raging Rhino. From Dominican Saxon. The fact that Vigilante's whistling and humming happily, while he's massacring the family, and Raging Rhino does drop in. Gender swapped Alfred E. Newman was one of the insults to the children. And I think it works that the kids have no idea what you're talking about.
Yeah.
When you say something like that. But and it's there's a sense, and I've talked a lot about it on this show and others. There's oftentimes there's a sense that the DC expanded universe is not a place for a lot of fun, and this was a lot of fun.
Yeah.
The Suicide Squad was fun. Regular Suicide Squad was a little fun, but it was such a mess that it was really hard for it to be fun.
The key difference between those two movies is the first one took itself so seriously.
Yeah,
this is gritty, dark, Suicide Squad. They're villains and they're going on a mission and they're probably not going to come back. They're going to die. It's super serious. And it was no, it's not. Nobody cares. This is crazy. Yeah. And the reason why the second one was so good is because it was lighthearted. They knew it was ridiculous and he made it fun. And
for me, I had an issue with them only putting a D in front of it. I was like, how's anyone in the future gonna
kind of a power move? Well, the idea is that no one will ever watch the other one. We just can pretend it doesn't happen.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, just for the best part of that, which is Jared Leto's excellent Joker. I mean, I think that's what people will watch Suicide Squad for.
I mean, Harley Quinn.
Yeah, I think that's
serviceable. He's not what makes the movie bad. It's just a bad movie.
Yeah, and honestly, it isn't even just Jared Leto does not make the movie good, but he's not the reason the movie's bad. No. He's a bad thing in a movie that is also a bad movie. Yeah.
He's just one of many on that list.
Yeah. So yeah,
I will say I like that scene. It's the only thing I liked in the Snyder cut, which I curse you for even like.
I didn't tell you to watch all 4 hours of
we
it.
You should have like been like, Michael, you won't like it. Like, don't watch it. But
I mean, it's like an hour and 20 minutes longer than Eternals. So
that extra scene where
with Joker,
God, so good.
You liked it in the
loved
Snyder
that
cut.
scene. Loved it.
Where they tried to tone down Jared Leto from being as you know, the idea that he would get those tattoos is something that it's just in complete contrast to everything that I know about the character. You know, which my favorite Joker is still Cesar Romero, but what do I know? That's how I like my Jokers.
My favorite Joker is Mark Hamill, so
he's great. Oh my God, we lost Michael.
He was very upset.
He dropped the mic on that one.
He said Jared Leto is the Joker.
As we talk about using the bathroom, Dominica Saxon says, I used to work with a guy who would do that. We'd go into the restroom and he'd be there at the urinal with his tighty whities around his ankles. I don't get that. And Raging Rhino says, release the Ayer cut of Suicide Squad. My understanding is that it would not make it that much different than what it was. I don't know that it would make it better. But
yeah, Ayer's direction and vision is what made it to be so serious and not able to laugh at itself, which just made it unbearable to watch. So him having more creative control would, I guarantee you, only make it worse.
And I mean, I think that's for me always been the fundamental problem with DC's on-screen universe is that it does take itself too seriously. I think the Christopher Nolan take on Batman worked really well for those films. What didn't work was let's try and do that with Superman, a character who is not dark like that. You can have dark things about him, but he's truth, justice, and the American way, or whatever they've turned the American way into. I know he doesn't say that anymore, but that's Christopher Reeve, that's Superman. And it's like, you can make him a little bit rougher around the edges, but not to the extent that they did, I don't think. So
I mean, yeah, it seems like it should be common sense, like you have the Justice League, right? And then you have the Dark Justice League, right? And that's where all the dark stuff happens. Or you have the Avengers team, right? And then you have the Dark Avengers. There's a reason why they separate these brands. Certain teams and certain characters are just not meant to operate in certain thematic places. And yes, sometimes it's interesting to take them out of that and like see how they operate in another zone. But to make that your main vein of content for those characters, I don't think is a good idea. But I do think, to their credit, that between this movie and Birds of Prey and also like Doom Patrol, also, I think that they are kind of understanding that if to do some of the heavier stuff, you have to have, some breathing in between. You have to not take yourself too seriously in some ways. And that allows you to then, when you have the serious stuff, it matters more, right? Like that's kind of the key really to drama. So if everything is just serious and heavy, then ultimately you just stop caring about things.
Yeah. And I mean, I think that Peacemaker does a good, there's some really heavy stuff in it. I mean, he grew up thinking he killed his brother, and then it's never, they don't really get into it, but you get the impression that essentially his dad killed his brother, or whatever exactly that was. We don't get the full explanation on that, but he did something, whatever his brother's spitting up, whatever that is. I don't quite know what that is, but I mean, he did.
I read it as he did kill his brother. He hit him, and then his brother hit his head and had like a seizure or something. That's what it looked like, and then died. That's what it looked like to me. Maybe I need to rewatch that scene again, but either way, I mean,
no, yeah. So you're saying the takeaway is that Chris killed him, but
at the behest of his father. Like it's not like they were. And in earlier the scenes, you get like a little flashback of that, and it seems like maybe they're just like play fighting. But when you get the full context, like
that's true.
There's no way that he should hold himself responsible for that. But also at the same time, like that is an extremely traumatic event, which you're going to carry with you for the rest of your life.
Yeah, and it's something that we touched on last time, and I think it was Cammy Egan who said, "Yep, Robert Patrick was perfect as his dad, aka White Dragon." So you don't get enough of those just utterly unredeemable characters where the character is a bad guy, not someone who has misunderstood the reasons why they're bad. He's just bad.
And he has no qualms about it too. He understands that his point of view, most people think is bad, and he does not care.
Yeah, and I think Robert Patrick is phenomenal in that role. And
that was perfect casting. Not that he is that guy, but he plays that character very, very well.
I know. And then the suit that he has is so cool. You know, it's
So it's very on brand with what I would expect that kind of thing to play out as. But I just think he did a really good job of presenting it and like also talking about the implications of that with Adebayo and like other characters and stuff. Like they weren't just like, oh yeah, he's a Nazi, he's bad. Like they got into it. So I was really surprised by that.
Raging Rhino says the dad was the one forcing them to fight, and Dominicus Saxon is thinking along the lines there was definitely some kind of seizure, but not sure what triggered it, if he had a history of it, if he was on some medication, whatever it is. Chris goes through his life with the knowledge that he killed his brother, and his dad, didn't do anything to dissuade that, and told him he was a piece.
Made it worse. Yeah.
Told him he was a piece of shit because of it. And I already touched on it last time, but the sort of the flashback and thinking about his dad and all that is the surprising something that I never thought I would see, especially a tie-in to a superhero property, is the usage of the Faster Pussycat song House of Pain in a way where it completely fits the story and what's happening. And they play the whole song. And I was just like, I mean, that was a big turning point in the show where I'm just like, not only does he, he doesn't pick all this late 80s, early 90s hard rock with, glam metal, hair metal, whatever people like to call it. He doesn't pick it as a gimmick. He really like James Gunn really thinks about how to use it and what songs to use and all that.
He very much reminds me of like a Tarantino director in that the music is integral to the script and the story and like visually what's being presented. And yeah, I mean, I love him too because he chooses great songs that fit him, but they're always like there's a dozen songs that we've heard in a dozen other movies that would also kind of fit that. But the fact that he was able to find more obscure ones, and especially that fit within this theme of again, everything feeds into it, right? So Chris's obsession with rock and roll and glam metal and stuff, like all those songs also feed into that. It just makes for a really satisfying project. I understand some of Michael's criticisms, but as someone who almost always has something bad to say, I really have no criticisms for this show. Like I thought the pacing was excellent.
Yeah.
The action was excellent. The writing was excellent. The directing was like everything was just really good. The costumes also.
Yeah.
Like it doesn't make it easy to have him walking around in that Peacemaker suit and not make it look like super weird, but they did a great job with that. Vigilante's costume too. Like, oh man, this show is like firing on all cylinders. And this is exactly what I want to see from more live action, superhero stuff.
Yeah, DC or otherwise, and I think that you're right, because the Vigilante suit could logically have been really shitty, because, he's a guy who, he works at a restaurant. He's not like a full-time vigilante. It's just like for fun. He does that, and I think that you're right. It's very easy for there to have been production values that were left a little wanting, but that's not the way that the show got made. And also, I just think that, just on every level, I mean, you're right. It fires on all cylinders. It's just everything about it really does work. It is that perfect mixture of the dramatic moments, of the action, but also just ridiculous comedy, like the fact that his best friend is an eagle named Eagly. By the way, Michael's power went off, but he might be joining us again before we finish. So it was not your comment about Mark Hamill.
Okay, good.
But which, by the way, Mark Hamill was also the voice of the Hobgoblin on the Spider-Man animated series. It's the exact same voice he did for the Joker. But that's all right. I'm not.
If it works,
here,
pile on. If it works, why fix it?
Yeah, exactly. Let's see, what was this? Oh yeah. So Dominicus Saxon, the dragon suit being solid red and white, very KKK without saying it. Absolutely. And Dominicus Saxon, most serial killers have mental or physical labor jobs. So Vigilante being a busboy was perfect. Oh, menial. I think I said the word menial wrong. Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I feel like it's just who he is. Do you think that Vigilante interviews well? He's not going to be a manager at a Staples, so he's not going to have any kind of job where he has to interact with the public a lot.
Or anything that's going to require anything other than just minimal time investment too, right? Because he's going out at night. All of his money's going towards weapons, and like it costs a lot of money to be firing all those bullets all the time. Bullets aren't cheap.
That's a great point. Didn't think about it, but you're definitely right. And I think it's on the whole a very pleasant surprise what we got from it, and just the amount that I think I cared about the characters, and the sort of that episode that ends where Otobayu realizes that Myrn has a butterfly in his head. You're legitimately worried about her at the end of that episode, and then it's like, no, it's fine. We all know everything's cool.
As soon as she put that helmet on and was like, "Whoa, X-ray!" I was like, "No, him, no!" And then they revealed it, and I was like, "No."
Yeah, no, it's like she's not going to be able to play it cool,
Yeah,
It
feels
like,
I have to. It just feels so much like a comic. Like I can just see the book in my head. I can see the panels of like screen caps with the same words in a book, and it would just go very well. James Gunn is clearly a fan, not even just of DC or Marvel stuff or whatever, but of the format of comics, and understands how those stories are told. And I think he's just really nailing how to bring that to the screen. And I hope that he gets more opportunities to do that, and hopefully I think some other people will follow in his footsteps, kind of.
Yeah, and I mean, there's there's an interesting sort of, not really a movement, but there's a decent amount of commentary that the idea is, hey, he got to play with these characters, but how about James Gunn's Justice League? And specifically, the comic book artist James DeMatteis said that what he would like to see is him do what ended up being called Justice League International, which is the post-Crisis on Infinite Earths Justice League, with the Hal Gardner Green Lantern who's a dick and Batman punches in the face, and it's a different.
That could be interesting. Yeah. I personally, I would not want Gunn to do a Justice League movie unless it was like part of a trilogy, or like maybe they do the first one and like establish the team and stuff.
Yeah.
And then the second one, there's like some drama or something, and he comes into that one. If he was to do more DC, I really want him to do a Green Lantern movie. I want him to do Green Lantern. Hey, and like
Michael's back. The power's on.
With like Gardner and Hal and them dealing with each other. And you can also throw what's his name from the cartoon,
Black dude. You could also have the John Stewart.
Yeah, like there's so many potentials for these different characters. We already know that he does space and alien stuff well. I think that would be great for him, because it would suit that comedic tone while also allowing for some heavy action scenes.
Well, also something like Green Lantern would suit James Gunn, which is what we're talking about, Michael. What opportunities he could go to next within DC's.
Why do you think that?
Well, what I was going to say about Green Lantern is there's a Green Lantern.
Oh, Green Lantern. I thought you said Green Arrow.
There's thousands of them and many that even in all this time we haven't met. So you could go for obscure ones, you could make some up, and you could really mine the number of Green Lanterns.
Yeah, he's the guy he'll find one Green Lantern that was only featured in like a background of one really obscure issue, and then make him like a main supporting cast character.
Yeah,
which is awesome, because you get to take something that's already there, but then build on, flesh out stuff that wasn't there and create something that it's like new but also still familiar. Yeah, I think that would be a good fit for him. I mean, honestly, anything that he does, I'm going to watch it at this point. Like, I'm a solid Gunn fan. He consistently surprises me, and then even when I have high expectations, he meets them. So I'm a big fan.
Yeah, he said that he's done with that. Guardians 3 will be the last Guardians.
Good.
Probably just because Chris Pratt is looking for too much money at this point.
I mean, also I think they're going to try to move away from the trilogy format and just try to do single movies and crossovers, so that they don't tie themselves into contracts that they can't pay for and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And Evangeline Lilly's.
Well, yeah. I mean, they already filmed that movie.
She gave a hot note to Trudeau.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, but they've already filmed her movie, so it's like they can recast her, but
They're
not
gonna
for that.
shrink her down so little she can get no
They're
screen
just
time.
they're gonna give her the Luke Skywalker treatment and just like,
Or someone's gonna do this.
put a
She's
face
gonna be
all.
gone.
It's gonna be like Charlize Theron instead. They just put her face, superimpose it for the whole movie.
I would.
Or she's just never gonna take her helmet off in the whole movie. We get
I
one
think
scene
she's
in the
just gonna
beginning
get
where she's
killed
like,
like a bug.
"I am Ant-Woman," and then she's gonna put it on, and then she'll just never take it off again.
Yeah.
I mean, don't we all like Michelle Pfeiffer better?
Yes.
I mean, I would be happy to see Janet Van Dyne as opposed to Hope Van Dyne, but yeah, I know. I mean, it's we talked about it. I mean, the idea that the Letitia Wright, Evangeline Lilly sort of buddy movie with a soundtrack by Kid Rock and Ted Nugent. I mean, look, there is
Don't forget Meatloaf. Don't forget Meatloaf.
R.I.P. Meatloaf. Okay, but there's a big country.
Get a pass for being an anti-vaxxer, but whatever.
I mean,
in my personal opinion, everyone came out of the woodwork saying how it was like the greatest album of all time. Like when he died, I'm like, where were you for Meatloaf before this?
Well, I mean, Bat Out of Hell is still to this day like one of the top 10 best-selling albums.
I just don't really hear. I mean, I always. Growing up, you know, I was born in 1985, so the time period I'm growing up, Meatloaf was always the butt of a joke, like on a late night show or in a comedy. You know, I never have experienced life where Meatloaf was taken seriously.
What I mean, his name was Meatloaf. I don't think he was ever taken seriously, but he had a good voice and partnered up with an amazing songwriter. And
well, it's not like he was like Weird Al Yankovic.
No, there's only one Weird Al Yankovic. Well, I guess there's two because Harry Potter's played in the movie. So
weird.
As we start to wind down, let's talk about the only thing that to me is really a spoiler. So if anybody hasn't watched the finale, like I said last time, this is the time to just turn off the show because it'll be the last thing we talk about, and you can come back after you watch it or not. I'm not going to be upset, but it's very important, even though it's really a some throwaway dialogue and all that. So the big spoiler is the reveal at the end of the Justice League. Even if it's all in silhouettes, it's interesting because it means that there's still a Justice League, that the Joss Whedon cut didn't destroy the notion of the Justice League in this universe, and not just the upcoming.
Well, they needed room for extra chairs. Maybe they're gonna have the Dove of Peace or whatever on it.
The Birds of Prey.
No,
so good.
What is he talking about? I mean
the Dove of Peace.
Yeah, maybe Wonder Woman's like room for more.
It's upside down.
So yeah, and so we have this moment, and just having them in silhouette would have been fun, but the fact that they actually have two of them speak and on camera, and you have an exchange between Jason Momoa and Ezra Miller.
Well, what else was Ezra Miller doing?
The Flash movie. That's
Isn't
what he's
that
doing.
Done?
No, it's not done. And he went to the set.
Well, maybe that's why.
He went to the set of Guardians 3 to film this because that's what James was doing, because they didn't have it when they wrapped. So
it felt very much like I feel like they probably shot maybe the silhouette thing before, and then not knowing if they would get them back, and then
by the way, if in the script there's like if Diana and Bruce have had a line, or Kal-El, if Superman has a line, I'd like to know what the lines were that they could have had, if they were going to get those actors. But I was legitimately surprised that they had two of their movie stars, one of whose movie already came out and made a ton of money, and
I wasn't surprised.
I mean, look, if it ended and they weren't there, that would not have been a surprise, I think, to anyone. Because
the way they talked about them so much, I figured someone was going to show up. I figured Ezra Miller would, but it makes sense because Jason Momoa seems like he really just enjoys his jobs and his work. So it seems like a no-brainer that he would want to be there, knowing all of those fish jokes. going on.
Which I don't know. I think is great to see, and just his delivery of "fuck you, Barry." It's like you look at that at face value. It's like, yeah, these are friends just breaking each other's balls. That's what they're doing. They really like each other. No, Barry Allen does not think that Aquaman fucks fish, But of course, the internet being the internet, social media being what it is, people are like, they undid all the good work they did for the character building of Aquaman because now he's just a joke. It's like, no, he's not a joke. The whole point is that he doesn't fuck fish. But
I don't like the new Iron Man or Aquaman because he's not a joke. I don't like this whole, like, again, part of the whole DC, everything has to be darker and super serious. Like, look, Aquaman being a joke is not necessarily a bad thing, okay? Like, him being a lighter character and understanding that people make fun of him sometimes, and then every now and then he's, like, super useful, and they're like, damn, man, we're glad you're around. Like, that's an okay character. I love like, physically and his presentation, he's definitely awesome for, like, a superhero thing. It's just weird for that character. And
I feel you on that.
About, like, the Justice League dynamic,
as
him as this dark, brooding Iron Man, plus dark, brooding Batman, plus super dark, brooding Superman, and then kind of quietly but still kind of brooding Wonder Woman, like, and then we get Ezra Miller just cracking jokes. Like, what?
I couldn't take Aquaman seriously at all between that and Amber Heard.
To both of your point, just imagine if Marvel treated Ant-Man seriously and not the way that they did.
I like the way they've treated him.
No, I like the way he is in this. I like what they cast Paul Rudd. Of course, they didn't take him too seriously.
Yeah.
And I think it's perfect for that character.
If they'd have taken him more like a Bruce Banner route.
Yeah, I mean, and even this Bruce Banner.
About?
I mean, the Mark Ruffalo Bruce Banner is not taking himself too seriously.
Yeah, much more.
Ed Norton took him the most serious. Michael's favorite Bruce Banner, Ed Norton.
I do like that movie. I'm not going to say that it's good, okay, but I'm saying that I like it.
I like it. It's one of my favorite Stan Lee cameos where he drinks the gamma radiated soda. It's funny to me. I mean, look, if Dominica Saxon wants to make a point, Gal Gadot can brood all she wants, and I'm sure she does on the set of Death on the Nile, now in theaters. But yeah, so all right, so Michael, you weren't surprised, but Nate and I think we're both legitimately surprised. Because there's just usually a separation between TV and movies, It's like, yes, some of these
see what Marvel's doing, and
they see what Marvel's doing, but they didn't put Tony Stank in those shows. They didn't put their top. I know he's dead, but it's like they didn't put their top tier characters in it. When Doctor Strange doesn't show up,
we had Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. Like, you want to put something good in that?
No, I'm talking about the Disney Plus shows. When Doctor Strange doesn't show up at the end of WandaVision, then you're like, okay, that would have made the most sense of anything, and then they didn't do it. It's clear that they're not really putting their movie stars, their biggest stars, in there. We
got Ralph Boner instead.
We did. Oh, boy, did we ever get Ralph Boner. So I think that, there's the backlash of like, this is everything, it's like, oh my God, Zack Snyder did so much hard work, and look at James Gunn just making a mockery of it. It's like, no, it's probably good to have a universe where both Zack Snyder and James Gunn can make movies and have your characters.
Zack Snyder did way too much work, in my opinion. Like, why do you need 3 versions of the same?
I can't imagine that Zack Snyder will make any more films for DC. He has not. They didn't get their money back in their investment, I don't think. But in any case, I think that just. I don't know. What do you think, Nate? I mean, the internet is just a terrible place. Social media is a terrible place. And that's really, people need to be, upset that like Aquaman says fuck, but people got mad when Batman said fuck in the scene that Michael liked, and then, so
I'm so very out of the loop of DC fan bases. Like, I get some of that stuff on Twitter, but I get none of the DC stuff. So I didn't even know that people were upset about that.
I didn't either.
Like a really silly thing to be upset about.
Agreed. Yeah.
I don't know. Like it just seems, especially with the dark, gritty direction that they've gone in, like that Aquaman saying the F word in that scenario.
It was like, call the FCC.
It's not like it was like yeah, I do fuck fish. Like then I'd be like, whoa, and then the internet can be like, all right.
Can you imagine if his line was, "Hey, don't knock it till you tried it"?
Yeah, right. Like no kink shaming.
Yeah. I mean, and way more embarrassing is the Titans trailer where Robin says "fuck Batman." Like that's just stupid, you know. In the context of the show, it wasn't the worst thing ever, but it's
oh
like,
my god, that actor's not a good actor.
No,
he's like kills me that he's Nightwing.
I only saw that first season of Titans, and by the end of that season, I'm like, I like everyone except for Nightwing. Like,
I really wish they would make Nightwing an Asian American character, and I thought we were gonna get that because they were.
Well, wasn't Jason Todd on that first season, or I thought there was an Asian, or am I wrong about that?
If Jason Todd is Asian, I would have no way of
knowing. No, there was a new Robin though in that first season. Right?
He's half Latino or black.
Well, I haven't seen it in a long
Asian.
time.
I don't know,
yeah.
But
anyway,
the point in the new season, one of the characters that they introduce is the newest Robin. The what's his name?
Damian Wayne.
Not Damien.
I always
the one who's gay.
Drake.
Tim Drake.
Yeah,
they introduced Tim Drake, and he's black, so they went for a little bit of diversity in there.
Okay.
Well,
go ahead.
The guy from The Walking Dead that played Maggie's husband, the one who gets his head bashed in. Do you guys watch The Walking Dead?
No.
It's been a while.
Oh God, never mind. Well, there was rumor that he was gonna be Nightwing or like some version of Robin or something in this new iteration of Batman that's coming up. But I don't think that.
And Raging Rhino confirms it is Jason Todd in second and third seasons of Titans, but the ethnicity. Anyway, I think there's a lot for DC to do going forward that they could have more successes if they do more with James Gunn. What we do know is that there'll be a Peacemaker season 2. There's a lot to hope for with that, and I look forward to it.
That's the one thing I'm a little anxious about, because shows like this have a tendency to do like a near perfect first season, and then just because it's successful, they have to do another one, and there's not as much thought put or love or energy into it, and it won't be as good. So
I feel like you got to cap it off at like 4 seasons.
I just do one if it's really good. Like the way that this story was structured does not lend itself to a larger overarching story that we need to continue progressing to. If it ended here,
Force Z.
I'm not talking about little cliffhanger plots that are added just at the last of the end episode, so that if they do a sequel, there is a little string for them to hold on to. I'm talking about an overall arc. If they had introduced some larger villain or something that was also working with the butterflies that we didn't really find out about them that much, and then in the end we found out that their plan was for us to actually kill the cow because they're actually against the butterflies, and so now we have to find out why they did that, right? That would be interesting. Then I'd be like, yes, can't wait for season 2. As it is right now, there is no cliffhanger where I'm like,
except
gotta get to season 2.
There's one cliffhanger is, does Judo Master like other kinds of Cheetos or just Flaming Hot? I don't know the answer. I want to see, does he eat the regular ones? I don't know. Well, it'll be fun to see, and I hope that I feel like James Gunn has the passion for this project and these characters and everybody. The cliche of a labor of love. So hopefully that would translate on the screen, but we will see. And what we will see for our next episode of the Bladtcast will be 2 hours and 56 minutes of The Batman, which I'm sure is going to be a laughing minute. It'll be in a contrast to this. I'm looking forward to it, despite that runtime. I've got my tickets already. My pal Will Sterling and I are going to see it, and I think John Nolan will be back to talk about it with us. And we will talk to all of you about The Batman on our next episode. But until then, Nate, where can people find you?
Everywhere. Dog Like Nate, 2 Gs, Twitter, Instagram, all that stuff.
And Nate appeared on a very recent episode of Biden Time, where we talked about Ukraine with Will Sterling's co-host from History Rated R, Craig Smith. It was a very enlightening conversation. We could have spent more than an hour. We could have spent more than an hour just on the history of the region. But so that was fun. And
we did all that, and then everything changed.
Yeah, I know, exactly. And then
Overnight.
Michael, you can find Michael in a lot of places, but the most important places you can find Michael every week, Wednesdays, 11 a.m. Pacific, 2 p.m. Eastern on Marvel Movie Talk, where we also see Nate regularly. And where else can people keep in touch with you, Michael?
You can find me on Instagram at I Hate Michael Shirley, and on Twitter. Oh, wait, no, yeah, on Instagram at I Hate Michael Shirley, and Twitter at Michael X Shirley. Hard for me to keep it all straight.
And of course, I'm at Christian Blatt. I'm at Christian DMZ, Twitter and Instagram, and at Bladtcast YouTube channel, BLADTCST. Please subscribe. And as of course, Dominica Saxon says, like and share. Thank you both. Thank you to everybody in the chat. Thank you, Peacemaker. Thank you, Eagly, who I hope gets his own spin-off movie called Iron Eagly, but I'm not going to hold my breath for that. That is all the time we have for this week. We'll see you next time on the Bladtcast.